The Startup Exchange is a service at the MIT Corporate Relations Office, and we create value for several parties. Industry members, so large companies that are members of our program, get access to MIT innovation, and specifically through our service they get access to startups and founders, the founder community at MIT. For the founders themselves, the Startup Exchange has an overview of what every founder here at MIT is doing. We have 1,200 startups in active matchmaking. So we provide them with access to potential meetings and exhibition space, and sometimes one-to-one meetings with industry, and we run seminars and also face-to-face meetings where they get exposed to industry challenges and potentially to partnerships and sometimes maybe even to broader strategic collaboration with large companies, which is very valuable for a young startup. Entrepreneurship isn't very, very different from research. We believe at MIT that you can follow stepwise methods, and that everyone who is bright enough to work or get into MIT can also be a very successful entrepreneur. When scientists translate their ideas into commercially viable ideas and concepts and companies, there are certain things they would be smart to think about. For sure, science is a long-term prospect, but when it comes to an idea that's commercially viable, you need to make it understandable, in a very quick and an easy way. And you need to show the real-term value, very short-term value, business value. One of the things that budding entrepreneurs really need to spend a lot of time doing is communicating with their potential clients, identifying some people that they think might be interested, and then just starting conversations with them. It's a trial and error approach. Generally, when a researcher has an idea and thinks that it might be commercially viable, you try to patent it. That's a typical approach at a university. And we have an office at MIT that you would go to naturally and see if they would be interested in helping you with patenting it, and if MIT would be interested in supporting that patent. Alternatively, it could be that that office decides, no, we're not interested in that, we don't believe that the school should be spending resources on that patent, in which case you'd get a waiver from them and you could freely explore that on your own. And there are many ideas that won't be patentable, or where the business idea just might be interesting on its own. Even if it's derived vaguely from research, it may not be an idea that MIT is interested in patenting. It could still be a very viable business idea. So there's various paths that a research project can turn into a commercially viable idea. Usually takes a little bit of time. You need to be exposed to lawyers in this case to evaluate whether they think it might be patentable. But more than anything, it's a question of commercial viability. The researchers have to take special care that they follow the rules of their particular institution when it comes to intellectual property disclosure. PhDs and postdocs can be excellent founders of companies, no doubt. And it happens many times that they work together with one of their lead faculty members, and it is in fact the postdoc or the PhD student that spins out the company and in fact takes it on full on. However, not all of those will become great CEOs. So there's a big distinction really between a founder and a CEO. It could be that you should realize that your strength is in generating new ideas and concepts and product lines, but your strength may not be, for instance, in managing a growing team. But there are a lot of exceptions here, and I think at MIT we believe that anybody could fill any position in a company. So it's not that, it's just what are you good at and what are you interested in doing. There are so many clever people around MIT who want to help you with your startup, so sometimes it's just better to find the best person for the task. It is a fact that university educates a lot of people that are not going to go into research or may not directly want to go into industry, and they might be interested in entrepreneurship. In any case, at MIT we have recognized that there is a pool of PhD and certainly of postdoc students that they will be at the institution and they will not be offered jobs at MIT. And we found that as an opportunity and created a program called Translational Fellows, where those postdocs are actually able to explore ideas and IP generated at MIT and can work on it for some time during their actual postdoc and can discover and basically enhance that IP to the possible result of commercializing a technology or starting a company based on that technology. So I think it's a win-win opportunity. They get some skills that they wouldn't really otherwise have, because clearly the postdoc is not naturally only geared towards commercializing technology, but in this new program that becomes a natural process, and they learn some skills, and MIT in turn benefits because we get more startups commercialized every year. I think when academics or scientists or PhD students think about going into entrepreneurship or starting a company, it's important to recognize that that is different from what their entire education has been about. Most likely they've spent a lot of time doing deep research into very specific areas. The area of entrepreneurship is similarly an academic area, and one can go deep into it, but that's really not what's required for commercial success. What's required there, is a set of different skills, and it's much more real time. It's teamwork and a lot of other skills that academics may or may not have, but it is perhaps not something that their education has prepared them for. So I think the most important thing to avoid failure in entrepreneurship, which by the way is a very big risk. I mean, the one first thing to realize is you're now venturing into a field that's very risky. The other thing is, even very bright people, and I think that's the case here at MIT, everyone is bright and thinks they're bright, but you cannot succeed with a startup alone. So the first lesson is to find a co-founder, ideally someone with complementary and different skills from yours. ILP works with our industry member companies in the following way. We work with them long term, developing kind of a strategic map for how they see innovation and how they think MIT can fit into that picture. We typically introduce them to faculty that fit their interests, and as of 3 years ago, we also have the Startup Exchange service where we introduce companies directly to startups. And the way we do that is we ask the company to be very specific about the problem that they have at hand, but not so specific that it doesn't interest our entrepreneurs. And then we basically post it to our startup community and ask startup founders to respond back. And when we think that there is a high potential of a quality match, of a very good discussion between the large company and the startup, we put them together. And then we let them see if they can find some sort of partnership. So one company that's seen a good bit of success lately is called Pauly6, and it's a company founded by Keith Huron, who was a postdoc out of Bob Langer's lab. And Bob Langer, for those who don't know, which are very few, he is basically the greatest living scientist. He has founded more than 40 startup companies and has over 200 patents and technologies that are licensed by various companies. But even so, Keith, who was a part of that lab, very quickly realized that he needed to find a co-founder, and he found a great business person to work with him. And I think a great part of the early success of Pauly6, which is a company that basically is transforming some part of material science, and they are creating very advanced products out of things like lemon peels. They're using sustainable organic products and creating industrial quality materials that can be performing as lenses, as basically going into any kind of commercial electronic product. But what I think Keith realized was, with advanced chemistry also comes the challenge of finding a business connection early on. So I think the formula there is he worked in a great lab and he partnered very early with a business person, and that's, I think, a recipe for success for any academic venture.
Fantastic.
One thing that I think all students at a university realize is that when they graduate, they to some extent immediately lose a lot of the network that they had available to them, and that there are certain factors conducive both to learning, obviously, and to entrepreneurship and doing a startup that are much more available when you are on campus. So the first advice to anyone would be, if you're even thinking in the direction of starting a company, do it as soon as possible and before you leave campus. Many of the resources just aren't even available to you as an alum. Having said that, second advice would be stay as in close touch as you can with the school, because there are many activities that you can tap into. And the truth about entrepreneurship, it just takes a lot of people. So I think there are even a lot of studies now out of the MIT Sloan School showing that the success of a startup deteriorates by zip code. So basically, if you're in the Kendall Square zip code and stay close to campus, you have a much greater chance of success than even if you venture a few zip codes out. Many reasons why this is the case. I don't think we fully understand the data around that yet, but it for sure has to do with the density of people with similar projects that you can learn from, and the availability of these early type clients that we work with a lot at Startup Exchange.
Okay.
The best project to learn entrepreneurship is to either start your own idea and see where it goes, obviously being careful about money and resources, or perhaps even better, join a very early stage startup and get to know founders. There's obviously no proxy for learning something yourself, but if you join a very early startup and take a little bit of risk yourself and join in and start understanding what kind of problems they have, you'll be very surprised. And it's a very quick, I think failing quick on someone else's dime is my best advice for starting entrepreneurship.
Okay.
We don't really need to make academics interested in entrepreneurship. At MIT, everybody is interested in entrepreneurship. And I think that's the advantage because we don't need to do a recruiting strategy. If they are interested, they will gravitate towards the environments at MIT where they can execute that entrepreneurship. That being said, of course, even at MIT, it's difficult to start a company. So the moment you are interested in entrepreneurship, there are a lot of resources here available, and the smartest people try to make use of those resources, because we want to create an unfair advantage and an environment here at the school where we have the inspiration and the tools available to make successful startups.